I'm Dana Perino, author of And the Good News Is, and I've just had an opportunity to be on Pavlina's Kidz Place.
Hey everyone, this is Pavlina from Pavlina's Kidz Place, and I'm on the air with former press secretary to President George W. Bush. She's an author, a Fox News contributor, and she's also has her new book called And the Good News Is. She's an optimist. It's Dana Perino. How are you doing?
I'm great, and I'm honored to be on your show.
Yes, thank you so much. So how are you doing?
You know what? I feel great. I wrote a book that's full of optimism, which is not typically the kind of book you might see if you go to the bookstores today. But I felt like there was a lot of good news in my life personally, but partly that's because I've had a lot of great advice along the way, so I wanted to share that with others because I think it can help everyone.
Yes, definitely, and I love your book. I've already started reading it. So describe your first time stepping up to the podium as like the press secretary. You know, there's media. You're the first woman doing this. You've got millions of, people watching you on TV. The president is standing next to you. So what is going through your brain at that moment?
Well, I remember looking out into the crowd, and my husband was there. And it was a big crowd, and he just sort of blended in with everyone, but I saw him, and I remember he and I locked eyes. And, husbands and wives get to the point where they can communicate without saying any words. And I just looked at him, and I thought, can you believe this? I mean, I grew up on a rural ranch in Wyoming, a cattle ranch. I didn't plan to be the White House press secretary, but I have been blessed to have so many people help me along the way. I do remember stepping up to the podium that time and remembering something from my days in college. My freshman year, I was on the speech and debate team, and I made it to the final round of a tournament. And my speech coach came and found me, and she said, remember that it's okay to have butterflies in your stomach as long as you make them fly in formation.
Before being the press secretary, what was a moment that you had, being stronger than you thought you were capable of?
I think one of the things I write in my book is that I'm just like everybody else. Human beings, in particular women, they tend to have a lot of self-doubt, okay? And you talk negatively to yourself all the time. So there were times when the briefings were going to be very tough. I mean, sometimes the facts were really bad, especially during the war. And I had to stand up in front of the world, and I had many different audiences to speak to. But I'll tell you two things that helped me the most. Number one, I always made sure that I had more facts and was more prepared than anybody else in the room, and that included the reporters. And I made sure they knew that I was the most informed. And that way we had an understanding that I would provide them as many facts as I possibly could, and then if I couldn't provide them right then, I would get back to them. That's number one. Number two is I used to always imagine if President Bush were watching me right now, would he be proud of what I was saying? And if the answer was no, then I swallowed my sarcasm, and I would try to be more thoughtful and gracious at the podium because we had so many audiences all at once, and especially during the very difficult times during the war. One of the most important audiences is the military. And sometimes the military needs to hear something that the civilian population might not like that much, and I had to keep that in mind.
You've had some amazing moments that most people would never have, the opportunity of having. So, what was a moment that just seemed so surreal because it was so amazing?
Well, I will tell you one of my favorite moments I write about in the book is my first chance to be on Marine One, which is the helicopter that takes the president back and forth where he needs to be. And I was the deputy press secretary, and one of my pieces of advice to everybody out there is always take the deputy job, because that's where you learn the ropes, and that's also where you get to know the boss a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I remember my first trip on Marine One, we went to the Boy Scout Jamboree in Virginia where he gave a speech, and everybody went crazy. And on the way home, there was this beautiful sunset. It was a June evening. And we got on the chopper, and the president had a boxed dinner that the White House mess had provided for him. And he opens it up, and he hands a sandwich to me. And he said, "You want one of these?" And I said, "Oh, no, sir, that's okay," because I thought, surely you can't eat the president's sandwiches. And he said, "Oh, come on. You got to share one with me." And it was his favorite. It was peanut butter and honey on toasted raisin bread. And so we sat and munched on peanut butter and honey sandwiches, and he asked me all about my family. And he just got to know me, and I realized, oh, my gosh, this is going to be the most amazing opportunity of my life. And I will remember that sunset and that ride on Marine One for the rest of my life.
So you mentioned in your book, the most important lesson that you've learned is forgiveness. And you learned that from President Bush. So how has forgiveness worked in, work situations? And has that, changed the way you work?
Sure. So, the first people that teach you about forgiveness is your parents. And then if you're affiliated with a church or other religious organization, often forgiveness is a tenet, because forgiveness allows us as human beings to be kinder to each other and to move on and to free ourselves so that we're not acting bitterly. And there was a time at the White House when I was very upset about a former colleague's, what I thought was a betrayal of the president and of us, his former colleagues. And the president heard about this, and he called me into the Oval Office at 6:40 a.m. Yes, we started very early in the Bush White House. And he said, "Hey, I hear you're upset about this book." And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And he said, "Well, listen, I want you to try to forgive him." And I said, "Well, can I throw him under the bus first?" And he said, "No." He didn't want me to live bitterly and that we had a more important job to do. And he said, "No one will remember this book in 3 weeks." And, he was right. And I remember that day feeling just so much freer. And to realize that there's a higher purpose to what we were doing, and that being so tied up in knots with my frustration and anger towards my former colleague was just weighing me down. So I took that lesson again, learned as an adult again and this time with the teacher being President Bush, and I've applied it to my everyday situations, including, I live in New York City. You can get jostled around on the subway. I try to just be thoughtful and forgiving. And I also have to do that sometimes. I work in commentary, and people express opinions, and they often do so very vehemently, sometimes angrily. And I've learned to just be forgiving and let things go. And I have to say, that's what we have on The Five, which is the show I do on Fox News. We might really battle it out during the segments, and then in the commercial breaks, we have more fun than a family at Thanksgiving.
Like you said in your book, going to college or not, because I know my parents grew up in a world where if you didn't go to college, it was a failure. But now it's not really that case, because there's a lot of reasons, not to get into debt, or there's committing like projects like the Peter Thiel scholarships. So I'm going to college, but I think teens have like changed the way they think about, not going to college as a failure. So like, what would you say about that?
I do think that the perception is changing. However, one of the things I write in my book is not necessarily about college, because I still think college, all of the statistics show us that over the long haul in your life, you will be more successful, at least financially, if you have some college, if not a college degree. And I think it's a great place to go and learn and to be perceptive. One of the things I say in my book, though, is that you do not have to go to an Ivy League college to end up working as the press secretary of the United States or whatever else you want to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was not on that track. I went to a very small college, partly because my dad thought it would be better for me, but also because I got a speech team scholarship. But I do say in the book that graduate school, that I think is in question. Unless you know that it's going to help you professionally, or that you just really want to do it, I don't know if it makes sense to go hundreds of $1,000s in debt to get a graduate degree, because I don't know how much help that will be to you professionally. I am optimistic that the innovations that are coming for higher education in America are going to help young people like yourself and others that are just starting out in the college world. There's a lot of new ways to educate, and some online courses, some less expensive options that still get you the same results. But I understand that there's a little bit of hesitation, and your parents have worked so hard to make sure that you can get to go to college, because that was the goal. Mm-hmm. And I think now college and higher ed knows that it needs to adapt to make sure that it is serving you better.
Sean Hannity gave me a huge break that, meant the world to me. Who gave you a break, and did it change your life?
I'd certainly say that there were several people along the way. One of them was a congressman from Colorado named Dan Schaefer, and he was the first congressman to hire me as a House of Representatives press secretary. And, Pavlina, I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. And they helped me so much. I say in the book that they gave me enough rope to do my job, but not enough to hang myself. They were always there to make sure they could help me. And certainly then President Bush, to make me the first woman Republican press secretary, showed he had a lot of confidence in me. And when he announced me at the press briefing, he said, I chose her because I know she can handle you all, and I believe she'll give me good common sense advice in the Oval Office. And you couldn't ask for better than that. But you and I have something in common, because I didn't know that about you and Sean Hannity. But in my book, as you read later on, it was Sean Hannity who first tells Fox News, you need to hire her. And they already had some Bush people, like Karl Rove, on TV, and they thought, well, why would we need another? And Sean Hannity said, no, I believe she's different. And he gave me my start at Fox, and that's what led to me totally changing careers and becoming a full-time commentator.
I'm really excited because 2016, I'll be a first-time voter, and, fortunately, I know I've interviewed and talked to a lot of the candidates. So what is your opinion on 18-year-olds, should they go beyond, like, the hype and the smoke and mirrors and just, like, with them voting?
I sort of think that this is the most exciting vote of your life, right?
Yes.
It might not be the most exciting election of your life, but it's certainly the most exciting vote of your life. And yes, by all means, there's so many other ways to get informed now through social media and lots of different ways to reach out, like your show, right? You're interviewing people for your audience, and that's important. It's not just reading something in the New York Times.
Exactly.
You are asking the questions that you think that people your age would want to know answers to, and I think that that's great. So by all means, I'm for more information, more informed voters, and I think that democracy is a participatory sport. Can't sit on the bench. You have to get out and understand what it's about and to vote for what you think is in the best interest of yourself, your family, your colleagues, and your country.
You mentor kids, on, good habits and manners. So what would you say is the most important good habit or manner for a teen to have?
Okay, for teens, well, there's a lot of them in the book. There's some very practical things. I'm going to give you three. One of them is no chewing gum in a meeting or an office or an interview. Do not do that anymore. Also, Ugg boots. I like Ugg boots, too. I wear them in the winter to take my dog out and stuff, but you can't wear them all day long in your office. What I mean by that is you have to dress for the job you want, not the job you have. You need to look good, pull yourself together. That's about self-respect and respecting your employer. But the third and most important thing for teens that I want them to know, and I start out the chapter, the advice chapter, with this issue of up-talking. You've probably heard young people talk like this, and I'm going to do it as an example. It's where everyone ends a sentence at the end with a little bit of up-talking. Do you see what I'm talking about? Teenagers, in my opinion, don't even realize that they are doing it. But it is holding them back from achievement. And a lot of people, if they don't break the habit in their teens, are carrying it into college and even into their first or second job. And in my opinion, it is holding them back from promotions and also just possibly getting the chance to be invited to a meeting or to succeed. If you are up-talking, you will not succeed. So if you know somebody, that your friends talk like that, catch each other. Stop each other from doing it. You don't have to embarrass anybody, but people don't even realize they're doing it. So it's the most important thing we can do as older people. Although I feel kind of elderly at this moment. But for older people, mentoring younger people, the number one thing to help young people stop doing is up-talking.
Yeah, definitely. I've noticed some kids at my school that talk like that. You're also a disc jockey, so how would you sign off on air?
Well, this is years ago, and it's changed so much. I was a country music DJ from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. I made minimum wage on Saturdays and Sunday nights. This was when I was in college. And back then, you had to get into radio. I was kind of shy, to be honest. But the call letters were KCCY, FM 96.9, Country, in Colorado Springs.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Pavlina, I adore you.